Bank. Mustafa Barghouti is president of the Palestinian National Initiative and a member of the Palestinian Parliament. Dr. Barghouti, really appreciate you coming back on the show. Let me start really where our Jeremy Diamond was just talking about that, where he left off, and those comments from President Trump of cleaning out the whole thing, speaking of Gaza. This is pretty alarming. Your reaction, first of all, to what you heard?
Well, thank you, Isa, for having me. I think what President Trump has said is very dangerous. I don't know if he comprehends completely the meaning of what he said. But as Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders said, what Trump called for is nothing but a war crime, and a call for ethnic cleansing, which is a war crime. President Trump wants to receive, maybe he hopes to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, but if he continues saying these things, he will be classified as a war criminal. That is very dangerous. And what he calls for is absolutely not going to happen. You have seen how Palestinians returned after suffering from genocide, collective punishment, and ethnic cleansing by the Israeli army. They went back to the places that were devastated. 90% of their homes were destroyed, but they still insisted on going back to the north of Gaza because this is their home and they won't leave it. And they would not accept to be displaced again after they have been displaced in 1948 by Israel. So the other thing is that who's going to accept what Mr. Trump spoke about? Today we've heard the responsible people in Jordan and in Egypt declaring very clearly that they will never accept this kind of displacement of Palestinians to Jordan or Egypt. They said it very clearly that this would be a very big threat to the national security of both Jordan and Egypt. So I don't know who advised President Trump to say these things, but whoever did harmed him terribly, and he should retract what he said, in my opinion. And we, the Palestinian people, will not be accepting to be displaced from anywhere to anywhere.
So what do you think? I mean, he's a week into his presidency and he's already saying this. Do you think it was a slip of the tongue, or do you fear, Dr. Barghouti, that this is the future of potentially US policy vis-a-vis Gaza? That's the real fear, I imagine.
No, it's not a slip of a tongue. I think there are advisors to Mr. Trump and people in his administrations like Mike Huckabee, who's going to be the American ambassador to Israel, who clearly and openly said that Palestinians don't exist. We don't exist for him. We're an invention, as he claimed. We've heard also other terrible comments by the new American representative in the United Nations. This kind of racist approach that is totally biased to Israel is not going to be helpful. And it's going to harm even the administration. I don't think Americans would ever imagine somebody saying that Americans should be displaced, for instance, to Afghanistan or Mexico. What you don't accept for yourself, you cannot accept for us as Palestinians.
And you were mentioning the Elise Stefanik, who's been Donald Trump's nominee to be US ambassador to the UN, who said last week, quote, Israel has a biblical right to annex the West Bank. I think that's what you were referencing there, Dr. Barghouti. Whatever, it is, however he said it, it's already, as we heard from our Jeremy Diamond there in Tel Aviv, it's already being endorsed by some far-right voices. Bezalel Smotrich, who said here that encouraging migration is the only solution that will bring peace and security to the residents of Israel and alleviate the suffering of Gaza's Arab residents. And then he added that he was working on a plan to implement transvision. So speak to the pressure that needs to be applied here from neighbouring states. I'm thinking here of the likes of Saudi Arabia. What do we think? What do you want to see here?
What you refer to is in fact, fascist Israeli ministers who are advocating not only ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, but total annexation of the West Bank. And Smotrich, this fascist minister, who is still in the Israeli government and who was against the ceasefire, like Ben-Gvir and others, said it very clearly when they came to power. He said that they should fill the West Bank with settlers and settlements so that Palestinians would lose any hope of a state of their own. And then Palestinians have to choose between leaving, which is ethnic cleansing that he's advocating, or accepting a life of subjugation, which is eternal apartheid, or die. And that's exactly the kind of genocide that was committed in Gaza. So, of course, the Arab countries like Saudi Arabia and others, Trump is hoping that they will be investing in the United States, of course, have the duty to say to Trump today that this is unacceptable and another ethnic cleansing will not be allowed. And I hope they will say so. But we already heard from many Western governments almost condemnation of what Trump said, maybe indirectly, but they all declared today that ethnic cleansing is not an acceptable option and that Palestinians should not be removed from their homeland.
Let me get, you're in Ramallah in the West Bank. It's important that I get your take on what has been happening there. We have seen the Israeli military intensifying its operations, military operations in Jenin. And while it does say it's going after terrorists, our teams on the ground, Dr. Barghouti and Al-Bashir and team, they said they've seen civilians being forced out their homes, some with 20 minutes warning. The UN said the entrances of major Palestinian cities have been closed. Can you tell us what is happening? Because there may be a ceasefire in Gaza, but life is certainly looks like it's getting harder in the West Bank.
Absolutely. Actually, while the military actions have stopped in Gaza and we have ceasefire, Israel has moved the war to the West Bank. Not only Jenin camp is attacked continuously, and actually there is an act of ethnic cleansing taking place there where thousands of families have been forced by Israeli military to leave their refugee camp, and several houses have been already burned or bombarded completely. And the Israeli military action has expanded today to Tulkarem area, another Palestinian city where the Israeli army has occupied the city, spread its military everywhere, are shooting people in the streets. They have already besieged the hospitals in the city, and they are attacking now Tulkarem refugee camp as well. So we are talking about an expanding military operation that will take the lives of many Palestinians. But on top of that, 900 military checkpoints have already been imposed on the West Bank, including gates that shut off completely villages and towns in the West Bank, preventing economic life, preventing freedom of movement. A trip that usually takes 40 minutes now could take 5 hours, and sometimes it cannot happen at all. So we see now a massive oppression of the Palestinian people. And while the world is now conducting, remembering actually the Holocaust, the big question here is what do the Israelis do to us? Are they trying to create another Holocaust? They've suffered a lot. Their ancestors suffered a lot from the Holocaust. So why are they doing it to us now? This should stop. Palestinian people are entitled to freedom, are entitled to self-determination. We want real peace. We want just peace, but we want to be treated as equal human beings. And what Israel is doing now in the West Bank, as it did in Gaza, is absolutely unacceptable and a violation of every international law.
Dr. Barghouti, appreciate you taking the time to speak to us as always. Always appreciate your analysis. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.